Welcome to ecotopiaU. I'm your host, Melissa McGinnis. I'm with my co-host, Tom Wright, and today we're going to be discussing technical nutrients. That sounds a little bit out there.
Well, it's a concept that comes from cradle-to-cradle design, which is part of the idea of a circular economy. Technical nutrients are those materials that cannot be broke down in natural environment but are essential to industry. Technical nutrients are kept within closed-loop cycles, separate from biological nutrients, biodegradable materials that can be safely returned to the earth. These two nutrient flows must be kept separate in a cradle-cradle system where a product is truly recycled. So examples of technical nutrients are going to be plastics, glass, metals. Paper, when it's recycled, is a technical nutrient. Paper, when it's composted, is a biological nutrient.
Oh.
Okay, so just again, we're talking about a type of cycling in an economy that is non-biological in the sense that the technical nutrient is kept in a loop by itself as a nutrient for that loop. That's why I use paper as an example, because it becomes very confusing to describe paper as a technical nutrient, because obviously paper comes from plant life.
Well, in an ideal world, that paper was developed for one or the other cycles.
Well, no, in this case, no. In terms of cradle-to-cradle nomenclature, it can be either. It's one of those interesting where aluminum, although there is a little bit of aluminum in soil, but it's not designed to reintroduce aluminum can to soil. That's not correct.
Would it be safe to say that technical nutrients are anything but organic nutrients or organic matter? And that's food, that's biological?
Well, no, that's why I use paper as an example, was to try to make that distinction in people's mind that how even a biologically created material could be in a technical nutrient loop.
Got it.
Let's take some laminated packaging as an example of where this sort of hits the road. And so you have what's called aseptic packaging, which is Tetra Pak is the big brand name there. Your soup broths come in Tetra Pak now. And
it's like the box that sometimes milk comes in.
In the EU, that's the standard carrier for dairy milk, by the way. Yeah.
And it's a layered process.
Right, and but it's layered. It's 75% fiberboard, 75% from, in fact, Tetra Pak's all from FSC certified forests, but the other 25% is poly and aluminum. So if I remember the layers, it's polyethylene, aluminum, polyethylene, fiberboard, polyethylene again. So it's a multi-layered thing. But when it's recycled as a technical nutrient because the fiber is removed and the polyaluminum is recycled as a separate stream into building materials or whatever. So they're technical nutrients, even though it has a biological content. It's a the fiber is recycled into many things. Toilet paper. Okay.
But it goes into that fiber goes into that stream. The technical nutrients go into that stream.
It may be true that a biological nutrient is a technical nutrient for a part of its life, but then can re-enter the biosphere. That's true. So that I want to be clear about what I'm saying.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. But the other point there is that there are technical nutrients that aren't ever going to be good for the biosphere, so they should be constantly recycled. And I think this is where plastics probably comes to mind more than any other item. Mm-hmm. The best everybody knows about the chasing arrows on plastics, I think.
Well, let's just back up for a minute.
Okay.
Where does plastic come from?
Fossil resource. Well, to be clear, a plastic can come from a carbohydrate or a hydrocarbon, okay? But the vast majority of plastics are coming from a hydrocarbon.
And what's the process? I mean, I don't want to take for granted that our viewers understand, or even I don't quite. You have a plastic bottle, you just think maybe it fell off a tree or something.
No, it came from either petrolium or natural gas. That was the source of it.
So it's like blown into the shape that it's from nothing?
Yeah, you're describing what Coke bottles or Dasani bottles. Yeah, those are blow molded. Yeah, they look like little test tubes before they're blow molded.
So they're petroleum based
or natural gas. Yeah, they're fossil. Yes, the large majority of plastics are fossil based. Yes. There could be plastics from a biological source, and that this is another confusing thing.
That's like a corn-based bottle or something like that.
Or from bagasse, from sugarcane. Yes, you could have a bioplastic, but then again, there's a thing called the green bottle from that some Odwalla and some Coke products are in. It's designed to be polyethylene, is PET. So even though it's from a biological source, it's designed to be a technical nutrient in a technical nutrient loop.
Wow.
Okay, it's not designed to be in a biological nutrient loop.
3, 2.
So the only way to know for sure is through the non-GMO.
Yeah, non-GMO. I mean, there's obviously, again, a person can research what are low risks. In other words, they shouldn't have any genetic engineering done to the crop. Tomatoes, for instance, heirloom tomatoes should be very safe. Okay, but something like papaya, yeah, not so safe. Something like zucchini, maybe not so safe. But for the most part, anybody can look up the list on the web of what's been approved or not approved. Greenpeace has some very good videos about the issues themselves. If you go to their website, you can, in fact, one of them is basically is genetic engineering a scam, and I haven't quite said that, but it's a provocative way to frame it. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that it's not. I'm not saying it's a scam, but what I'm saying is that if you're going to bring in something that makes the public an experiment, shouldn't there be some worry there? If people, I think people know about nuclear bomb experiments that happen in the desert and in atolls in the South Pacific. And the general public was in danger, and indeed there's high cancer rates amongst the general public that were exposed to those radioactive explosions, right? We would never do those again. We know better, right?
But we're doing it through our food supply.
No, this is a different type of poison, if you will, or a different type of toxin. Toxin may be a better word than poison.
We're literally poisoning our food supply, but we're just, through the experiment, trying to see, how much can we get away with?
That's what it feels like.
We can do this much. Oh, that's killing people. But if we do this much, we might be a little bit safer. Wouldn't the public be outraged that we're part of the experiment?
Isn't that a funny way you just said that? A little bit safer. What is that little bit?
I don't really know.
I know. That's what's.
Cancer rate is up 40% in the last 10 years. This autism study from MIT is truly outrageous. Yeah. She literally directs the link between autism and GMO. Through what's the chemical? Glyphosate. I think the public should be outraged.
Yep. Yeah, I think the fact that there isn't more transparency and why, the way I joke, of course, everybody knows that Monsanto is one of the main procurers of genetically engineered material and of seed. And I've always used the reference point of since it's seed, right, that in essence the crop is Monsanto's children. So it's kind of like, why doesn't Uncle Monsanto want you to know the names of his children? There's this lack of transparency. It's like, no, it's a secret. Well, no, it's not a secret. Mm-hmm. You should want if you're so proud of what you invented, you should want people to know about it. Mm-hmm. And so that just that transparency, so that the buying public has a right to know.
And the benefit for Monsanto would be creating a monopoly?
Well, that's what a patent is.
Is that what they're going for?
Yes, that's what a patent is by definition, sure. It's a hook. If you're a farmer, and remember that part of the dynamic is industrial farming has gotten way big. In the sense that there's so few farmers. I met a gentleman who farms 10,000 acres. And I don't mean he has 10,000 acres and farms with a bunch of other people. I mean he farms it himself. And it's just corn and soy, and he uses a tractor, and he likes riding his tractor. He's got he showed me pictures. He's got a stereo. He listens to ball games. He got a little TV set. Anyway, he farms 10,000 acres by himself. That's how mechanized this stuff has become. And so my point being is that it's hard, I think, for consumers to understand that the part of the dynamic is the cheapness is done through this kind of a monoculture system, with subsidies, because part of that corn and soy crop he's getting energy subsidies for. It's going to be biodiesel, it's going to be ethanol, which he's getting another check for that.
But the soil's being depleted through the herbicides.
It has to be.
And at some point it'll stop producing.
If you're not making it if you're not adding nutrients, what are you doing? It's really that simple.
You're depleting it, and then it causes runoff into the rivers and streams, and now the fish have all of the chemicals, and that's our drinking water. We're trying to literally extinct ourselves, or Monsanto is trying to extinct us.
No, you better watch. No, we don't want to say that. But the concept you bring up has a fancy term. It's called devolution or de-evolution. And that the industrial chemicals, I mean, boys' sperm counts are down, and are they? The tough thing to do in science is correlate stuff directly. There's correlatable data. In other words, sperm counts are down, and these things have been consumed over the last 30 years by our public that weren't consumed before that. So you can correlate them, but are they direct correlation? Probably not. So it's tough in science to prove the direct link of this thing caused this other thing. That's a very hard thing to prove most of the time.
Intuitively, no. Though intuitively, I think if you really sat back, I think you could find the correlation. And that's what I would suggest for all of our viewers to do, is to listen, to this podcast or watch this show, but then go do your own research and find out on your own. I'm going to put the link to that MIT report on our website, but join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on GMOs, and in terms of activating our viewers.
Well, I think I do shop non-GMO project verified stuff, and tell people, especially people who want to promote organic foods and organic brands, that they need, especially if they're dealing with these high risk corn, soy, sugar beets, canola. In fact, if you see cottonseed oil on a product, chances that it is not non-GMO are pretty close to zilch. So you really do have to just be clear that you would prefer a third-party verified source. That's the way to say it. And that's the non-GMO project verified. And it's a colorful butterfly. It's pretty easy to identify.
And applaud the brands that are going through the painstaking,
Yes.
painful process to be verified, but also to find product that is not GMO.
And then start to engage farmers on the shift, because the market is growing, okay? So it's about 15% to 20% per year the market is growing for non-GMO project verified certification. So they're finding more and more farmers. There's corn farmers retreating, especially from the Roundup Ready corns, and that really is, there's a movement. Again, you can find press releases about that. It's news. It's not.
When you shop at your farmer's market, sometimes they have these. We don't use pesticides or herbicides on these vegetables, but they're not certified organic. Would that apply to a GMO claim as well?
No, I mean, you're raising a very good point for customers and consumers, that a lot of claims at certain levels are not verifiable or verified. And I'm one of those older guys that when I got into the organic food industry, long before genetic engineering was our issue, the issue was who was certifying the crop as, and we used to have in the produce sections we called them Bibles, and they were basically binders with the plastic sleeves with somebody put a piece of paper in there that it showed the growing methodology, and then it would have a signature at the bottom, and you'd ask whose signature it was. It was the guy's next door neighbor, which could have been his cousin or his uncle. So we moved a long way since the late 70s now to where we have actually third-party certifiers. And this is really pertinent to the transparency and integrity of the claim. And so I do think that organic industry, natural products industry, people that use a lot of corn, soy, canola, sugar beets in their product definitely should go through a non-GMO project verified third-party certification, and it'll help create more farmers. It adds value. The farmers actually make a little bit more money. Okay, obviously organic farmers make more money per acre than a chemical farmer. They also farm less acres, if people wonder how that math works. So it's very pertinent for the buying public. Can vote on this one. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I hope so, and I think we should follow up. We as consumers we deserve transparency, and we deserve to not be a part of this experiment. I think we should start something called opt out. I want to opt out of this experiment. I don't want to be a part of it.
Okay.
But join the discussion. Go to ecotopiaU.tv, and thanks for listening. Thanks, Tom, for some of this clarifying information, and we hope to hear from you.
Thank you.
Nice. It's going to be a good show.
We're using less glass
Glass.
and more plastic.
Correct.
Okay. So where do these, let's go back to plastic. We recycle it in our bin. It gets picked up. I'm thinking I'm recycling. Where does it go?
Well, I mean, you want to hear some of the statistics? We're going to draw them up here. I'm going to look on, I'm looking on a website for you folks to know. It's the U.S., it's the EPA that keeps all this recycling statistics, by the way, EPA.gov. And recycling main packaging material, let's see, HDPE is around 28% of it gets recycled, PET around 30% of it gets recycled, and then number 5 is the next closest, and it's under 10%.
And that's only in areas where there's infrastructure set up for it?
No, that's the generic, that's the data from the EPA.
For overall in the United States?
2012, by the way, that data's from. So, and so that if you're hearing the math, I mean 70% of the PET is not getting recycled.
It's being shipped somewhere to be incinerated and or buried.
No, it's most likely being buried. I mean, it's going to have 3 outlets. It's going to get buried, it's going to get incinerated, probably still de minimis compared to burying, and 3 is going to wander in nature. Okay, so that's an obvious issue too. That some of it just
end up in the ocean.
Ends up eventually. That's the way, especially if it's lightweight. It tends to follow air.
How did we live for so long without these plastic bottles? They're not just water bottles, but they're for sodas and other things as well. And we lived with glass and aluminum.
Well, aluminum is 1960. Plastic as innovation with soda is probably a little after that. Plastic as innovation package is earlier than that. Steel cans. I mean, it's funny. I was cleaning up my creek bed a few years ago, and creek's a creek bed, right? And I found this brand of beer called Burgermeister embedded in as a can. It had the stuff had leaked out, but it hadn't been punctured, and it was a stainless steel can, and it actually had a date on it. It was 1956.
Wow.
And so beer used to come in stainless steel cans. That was it. And of course, glass bottles. And bulk. I mean, that's the other thing that I don't think we have to live without plastic. I've never been. That's just a personal thing. I think anybody in the audience could decide to make that. There's a person named Beth Terry in Oakland, California, who's designed a plastic-free life. I think that's what she calls her website. Plastic-free life.
I mean, it would be ideal, but I think in today's society, the convenience of plastic, it's lightweight. I can't imagine ever going back from plastic.
Yeah, it's light and convenient, and this is why this discussion of technical nutrient coherence, so the idea that things would stay in a cycle because they were designed to stay in a cycle.
Right. So it sounds like what we really need is infrastructure to recycle these recyclable technical nutrients.
And it's infrastructure. It's like a convention of the makers of the molecules. They have to kind of sit around a table. We have strong antitrust laws in the United States, so theoretically Dow and DuPont aren't supposed to sit around, Eastman Kodak aren't supposed to sit around a table. They need to sit around a table.
It would really make sense, I would think, and I'm surprised this hasn't happened, but to really identify the most recyclable plastic and have an FDA or have the government some kind of mandate that these are the only plastics that should be used.
Well,
there's too many varieties.
But if you're a large plastic resin creator, you want more sales every year, right? We have this seemingly like corporate imperative for perpetual economic growth. You've heard me use the joke that, well, do we really want to all become 400-pound people? This perpetual growth actually makes sense. And the distinction is, in a take-make-waste economy, that's what it looks for. Because waste represents I don't have to replace it. I get to replace it with virgin material. I get to replace it with new goods, which is new sales. So, to shift the paradigm to a circular economy or cradle-to-cradle economy with technical nutrients means a different type of economic model for the resin makers.
And does each number, that's a different resin maker or, a different variety within the resin maker?
There's everybody can look up the name of the biggest plastic resin makers. It's not hard to look it up. So I won't go into that.
But does each number, do they come out with, we have a number 4 and it's lighter and it's this, is it better than the other one?
Performance, no, it's important, especially with beverage packaging, especially with PET, for instance. If you're going to put a carbonated product in it, it has to have a good barrier because you don't want to buy something that has no fizz. So yeah, they do make quality distinctions, but basically their PET bottle, just use number 1 PET. Again, I think the definition is that they only have to be 95% PET to be labeled with a number 1, and that number 1's losing its chasing arrows. It's going to become a straight triangle now because most of the stuff does not get recycled, and there's an implication with the chasing arrows that it got recycled.
I always thought those chasing arrows, and if you don't know what we mean, they're the pointing
Looks, it's like a
way.
Mobius strip it's like a Mobius loop. That's also another.
I assumed
triangle.
that product was recycled content and recyclable.
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
Because it's a continuous.
It's yeah, I know, and so it was a bit of a pulling people's legs. It had the intention of creating recycling markets. That's why it got kind of a pass originally from people. But I think now everybody realizes because the recycling markets haven't developed or developed robustly. Let's just put it that way. I mean, 30% of PET bottles and packaging are being recycled. That's it.
30% out of how many bottles are produced every year.
Right. Now, part of it is because the resin makers do need to sit down with the fabricator. So as everybody understands, there's these links in how plastic's made. There's a person makes a resin, but it goes to somebody who either thermoforms or injection molds the polymer into whatever shape is going to be a plastic bottle, a clamshell. And the reason I'm saying this kind of thing is that, and the best word to use is coherent. The polymers and the resin identity codes need to be coherent because they need to work with each other in the next life if they're really going to be recycled and really have value. But the way things are now is that they don't have it. It's cheaper to do virgin PET, okay, especially with the prices of fossil resources tumbling right now. It's cheaper to do PET from virgin material and it's recycled content. Recycled content is more of a social justice or awareness about a circular economy that takes a little more oomph from the company that's doing it. They got to market it. The other point I'd like to make too is that PET, number 1 doesn't mean it recycles well with every other number 1. The distinction is thermoform versus injected and molded. A clamshell is a slightly different PET, a different melt temperature than the bottled PET, and they don't recycle together. If you ever get the chance to go to see recycling done, you realize the bottles are baled separately from the clamshells.
What's a clamshell?
Just audience, berries come in clamshells.
It's a plastic
yeah,
container that folds in half.
It's got a hinge, yeah.
Got it.
Got a hinge. Yeah.
Got it. So bringing it back to terms of like activation, just for the sake of, we're running out of time, and this is obviously a really hot topic, and I think really important.
And we're talking about the technical nutrient that probably concerns most people, the plastic.
The plastic. Yeah. But what do you want our audience to take away? I mean,
well, I do look at a plastic-free life. I think I do see if you can match up to her goal. It's not the worst thing in life to learn how to live a different way. You could also learn how to buy whatever you're buying in bulk, if you will. In other words, reuse your own package. One of the things that is a benefit in China, they are reusing PET bottles. They're actually just like glass, they're rebottling PET there. So there's that possibility that could happen. Buy things with recycled content, yes. Buy things with recycled content that are certified by some third party so that the claim is not spurious. That's even better. So.
Well, those are some great tips. I think we'll have to do a follow-up show on this since it is definitely such a hot topic. And again, such a learning curve for all of us. I had no idea. And I would also throw in as a tip, maybe pick the lesser of all of the evils in terms of a convenience to go beverage.
Yeah,
and that would be glass or aluminum.
Or if you need bottled water, use a refillable bottle. That's always an option that's there for you.
Okay, well, join the conversation at ecotopiaU.tv and definitely give us your suggestions on how you might be potentially leading a plastic-free life. And again, thanks for joining us, and thanks, Tom, for teaching us so much today.
Yeah.